Well, I've done Florida, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. So the other swing state I want to do, crucial state, is Arizona. And it's an odd state. It doesn't follow the same patterns of the other three. It's a state where the Republicans have a registration edge, unlike Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, where it's for Democrats. And looking at it, it looks like it's really going to be hard to call. Nevertheless, I'll run through the elections, look at the patterns such as they exist, and I'm tempted to be cowardly and just say it's a toss-up. I have no idea, but I'll make a prediction at the end. So if you can, stick with me through the video. In 2008, the Republicans had a 200,000 edge in registered voters. McCain was the candidate, who's the senator, at the time he was the senator from Arizona, running against Barack Obama. In the actual election, Obama lost. McCain won, although he lost nationally. But what's interesting is McCain, even though he had a 100,000 vote edge in registered voters, actually won by 200,000, which suggests a McCain factor. I mean, he's their homeboy. He's their senator. They love McCain. He's a popular guy. They kept sending him to the Senate. So he did maybe 100,000 votes better than you might expect. Or it could be that Arizonans really didn't find Barack Obama that appealing, or that the Democrats were over-registered, even in Arizona, much like they are in several of the other states. So you really can't say, but let's, for the sake of argument, just say maybe it has something to do with McCain and leave it at that, and then move ahead to 2012. Election of 2012 pitted a sitting president, who usually has a lot of advantages, Barack Obama, against Mitt Romney, who I've already said, in my view, ran crappy campaigns. Of course, so did John McCain, but that's another story. Voter edges had remained about stable. The Democrats picked up some new registrants, so did the Republicans, and it was still about 100,000 votes different. So one would expect that Romney, being not from Arizona, would probably do worse than John McCain, the son of the state. But it's not what happened. Actually, Romney carried Arizona as well, and he carried by the same 200,000 vote margin, more or less. I'm just rounding things off here, but he had the same 200,000 vote edge that McCain had, which might suggest that maybe McCain isn't that loved in the state as wildly as some people thought he was, or it could suggest that, as you saw in other states where Obama's vote totals were going down, people were becoming more disgruntled with Barack Obama. It's hard to say. You're looking here at aggregates of hundreds of thousands of people and how they think. But the facts remains that the voter edge stayed about stable, and the outcome remained stable as well in 2012. Now, that's not going to be true in 2016. By 2016, during Obama's second term, 2012-2016, Republicans had gained a voter edge. They had added another 100,000 voters to their superiority over the Democrats. So that was a good sign for Donald Trump. In fact, it turned out to be a very good sign for Donald Trump. But if you look at the voting results, Hillary picked up about 100,000 more votes than Barack Obama had picked up in 2008 or 2012. She actually did better than Obama in Arizona. And you can't say that's because of registration, because registration during the previous 4 years had actually favored the Republicans. Now, Donald Trump won the state by the same margin that Romney had won the state, and McCain 4 years before that, around 200,000 votes, give or take the change. So basically, if you look at the three elections altogether, you would have to say that Trump underperformed. You would have thought that, given registration trends, Trump should have won by 300,000 votes, but he didn't. Now, what are the reasons for this? I mean, even in that election, Trump and McCain had been going at it, and Trump was sort of portrayed as being anti-McCain, which is basically true. And McCain had no love for Donald Trump. So it could be that some of the Republican voters who liked McCain were voting for Hillary Clinton. That's a distinct possibility. But whatever the causes were, whatever's going on here, the bottom line is Trump, compared to Romney and McCain in 2008 2012, McCain and Romney, underperformed in Arizona. He won, but actually he should have won by about another 100,000 votes you would have expected. So there's something going on. Either people don't like Trump, or they don't like Trump because of what he's doing with McCain, or some combination of the two, or maybe they were just wild about Hillary Clinton. That's hard to believe. Neither candidate. What's interesting, looking toward 2020, is that in 2016, neither Clinton nor Trump spent a lot of time in Arizona. Best I can figure out, looking at press reports and things, they each spent about one day, one visit in Arizona, which isn't a lot. Now, this could be because, given what had happened, I mean, the Democrats had lost in Arizona even when they had Barack Obama as a candidate, against John McCain in the middle of a depression, and against Mitt Romney, who was a crappy candidate. So I could see Democrat political strategists saying, there's no way we're going to win in Arizona. Don't spend a lot of money there. And maybe Trump was thinking, given what had happened, there's no way they could lose. So he didn't spend a lot of time there, which would explain the results. But then again, there's this loss of about 100,000 votes that seem to be missing for the Republicans. That could spell a problem for Donald Trump in 2020. Since 2016, the Republicans have added another 200,000 registered voters to their edge. You might say, well, that's good. The problem is the Democrats have added 300,000 new voters. So they've actually gotten to within basically 100,000 votes of the Republicans. Now, that was Trump's victory, 100,000. So if you just look at the numbers and you look at the trends, it would be very easy to predict that this is basically a toss-up. Neither side really seems to have an advantage. So it's difficult to say, compared to the other states, or to predict which way it's going to go in Arizona. It is the proverbial too close to call. But that was, when I was thinking about doing this at first, I thought that's probably what I should just say. It's too close to call and just leave it at that. But that would be cowardly. I mean, I've been predicting since August 2019, I think was the first time I posted a video saying that Donald Trump would be reelected. And I posted a bunch since then saying the same thing. So I thought it would be cowardly of me to take that toss-up out route. Let's be bold. Let's be brave. Stick your neck out. It's not like my business depends on this. I'm not Nate Silver, as I've often said. And it's not like if people lose interest in what I do and I lose legitimacy, I'm going to lose my magazine or my website. None of that's at risk. So what do I think's going to happen in Arizona? If you look at trends in other states, what we've seen is that during the Trump years, basically he seems to be gaining support, not losing it. I know there's this, I've said it many times, there's this, narrative that he's pissing people off and he's losing the registration at voting and everything. It doesn't really seem to be true. If anything, he seems to be adding support. Now, another thing to look at is enthusiasm, which I think is really important, and especially in a close election. Enthusiasm can be everything. Now, for enthusiasm, the best I can determine is that it's going in Trump's favor. Donald Trump has spent basically 6 days out there, and Pence was there at least once. So you can say there's like 7 trips. Biden and Harris have been there twice together. That's it. And if you look at Pence had several thousand people, I think, saw him. Trump had a huge crowd. Another time there was a truck convoy for Trump on some highway, Highway 17 or something. There seems to be a lot of voter enthusiasm for Donald Trump in Arizona. Now, we're told there's a lot of enthusiasm for Joe Biden, especially among unions and among Hispanics. The problem is the 2 visits they made, you don't see any enthusiasm, not just like less enthusiasm than we saw for Trump. There's like no enthusiasm. The first visit, it was interesting for me. I actually posted a story. It was from a local, I guess it was Phoenix news station. And they had a camera and reporter outside of this, what they thought was a campaign rally for Biden and Harris. And they were both there. But the reporters were saying, gee, like they're looking around, they're panning their camera back and forth. There's nobody in sight. There's a driveway and there's some limos parked there and there's a couple of Secret Service agents, but that's it. And the reporter is actually saying, where is everybody? What's going on? You know, they can't see the candidate. There's no people. There's nothing. There's nobody there. I posted that on Facebook. And Facebook put one of those, windows that pops up on it that this is not quite true news. And they linked to an article that said that the Biden campaign said this wasn't a rally. It was an event. An event. And they were meeting with the Carpenters Union leadership and the chiefs of some Native American tribes. That was the event. And I thought, well, okay, so that's why there was nobody there. They didn't invite anybody there except the handful of people. And I can understand that. I can see that. And they said that they did this for COVID. They don't want big rallies because they don't want their rallies to be super spreader events like Donald Trump's. Although I don't think there's been any evidence that any of Trump's rallies have turned out to be super spreader events. But setting that aside, I said, okay, that makes sense. There's a rationale to what they're saying. But I still had one question. If you're not inviting anybody, why did they notify the press? Because here's the press sitting outside in the heat. I don't know what the temperature was in Arizona a couple of weeks ago. Could be really hot, but it's a dry heat. But they're sitting out there and there's nobody there. It looks bad. The optics they always talk about is looks bad. So I said, if you're not going to invite any people to your event, why invite the press and not let them into the event? They released footage later of the meetings and Trump and Harris and talking to the members of the leadership of the Carpenters Union and Native American tribes. But in the footage you don't see anybody. It's Joe Biden at the podium looking up at what clearly must have been a Jumbotron monitor with his speech on it. And he can see him looking up and reading from it because he's looking up toward the ceiling. And they never show any people. And there's no sign of enthusiasm. There's no applause. There's no whistling or clapping or anything. I mean, if you just looked at the video, you could very easily conclude it was an empty room. Now, I'm sure there was somebody there. I mean, there's staff members there. There's a Secret Service, whoever's doing the filming. But, I mean, when you stage events like that, why not show the crowds? Trump stages an event, and they pan the crowd. They put the crowd behind Trump, too. So when you're watching Trump speaking and they got the camera on Trump, you can see people behind him clapping, applauding, standing up, showing signs, re-elect Donald Trump 4 more years. Blacks for Trump, Hispanics for Trump, whatever group for Trump. They're all there. Biden, flat backdrop, American flag or something. I forget what they used. Nobody in view. And they never pan whatever crowd was there or wasn't there. So you come away from this and you look at this whole event, despite the fact that Facebook, tried to block the post and called it fake news and all this other stuff. The reality is this was a poorly attended, affair and poorly planned on the part of the campaign staff. I mean, why invite the press and leave them outside and they have nothing to film and nobody to see? You're asking for bad press. I mean, this is just stupidity. And we've seen the Biden campaign do a lot of stupid things along the way. I think I was reading Philadelphia. They had, Barack Obama comes out. He's going to talk to the Philadelphians. And they had this drive-in thing at Citizens Bank Park. And then they broadcast it over the web. And Fox carried it on their website and others did too. The first 6 minutes, there was no audio. You just see you see Barack Obama standing in front of the podium going like this. And in the little box is somebody doing the sign language. Like how many people can understand that? So for the first 6 minutes, nobody knew what the guy was saying. But there were people there. Somebody was there because at the end he says, honk your horns, blah, blah, blah. And you can hear the horns going off. So there were clearly people there. And I saw some footage of people driving up in the cars. But I mean, if I was really a journalist and trying to cover that for a local TV news station, we have drones. I mean, I know there are plenty of people on YouTube who use drones for additional footage. They show, here's the shot. You put the drone, you fly it over the Citizens Bank Park. I've been there. I'm from Philadelphia. I've been to Citizens Bank Park. I know this is a huge parking lot. Fly the drone over the parking lot. Let's see how many cars are there. But they don't do that. And in none of his stories I could find, and I must have looked for a dozen of them I went through, nobody mentions how many people showed up. Well, we do know if you look at the sites that carried it and put it out over the internet, Fox had the most viewers, and these are probably conservatives watching to see what Obama has to say. And the other three sites were actually very few viewers. And the thumbs up and thumbs down you see in these sites, the thumbs up were, like 300, and there were 500 thumbs down. Like some of the sites look like not even 1,000 people watched. And you see this and you wonder, what the hell is going on? And, who's running this campaign? And I asked that question. I went and I looked. And the guy running the Barack Obama campaign, you know what his previous job was? He ran the Beto O'Rourke for president campaign. Now, if you're familiar with Beto O'Rourke's campaign, he didn't make it to Iowa. I mean, I think he shut down his campaign in, I could be wrong on the date, somewhere like December 19th. It was right before Christmas. Beto O'Rourke, suspended his campaign. And I guess his campaign manager ended up working for Joe Biden. So a guy who had just run a terribly flawed and failed campaign for Beto O'Rourke gets hired by Joe Biden to run his presidential campaign? I don't know. So I think if you look at all that, you'd say, well, Trump's going to win in Arizona. Enthusiasm. Now, Biden and Harris have since had a second visit, and I found the video of that on C-SPAN. And they flew into the airport. They got into a bus, a Biden 2020 bus, and they rode to some place. I don't know what it looks like, a warehouse or a big garage or something. And they set up the podium, and then somebody introduced them, and then he spoke and she spoke. She spoke looking at the camera. When Biden's speaking, it's the same thing. You can see him looking up and going like this because he's reading the teleprompter. And the whole time they never show the audience. They pan a little bit to the left or right along the bus. When he goes to get into the bus, they go up to the front of the bus and stop. But even C-SPAN never shows a crowd. And there's very little response. There's a couple of people clapping hands. I mean, that could be the staff. So if you look at these two events, there's nobody there that they had, basically. I mean, Mike Pence was in Florida last week. He had 4,000 people. I can tell you that these two events with Biden and Harris together, they didn't get 4,000 people. There's no evidence they got 1,000 people. There's no evidence they got 100 people at those events. So the Democrats have all these people registering, and there's supposed to be all this enthusiasm in Arizona for the ticket. Where is it? I mean, why can't they can go outdoors. They could space people out in a football stadium or something. Why don't they do that? And I think they know why they don't want to do it, because they're afraid people won't show up, because people aren't showing up. I saw one of Harris was in Asheville, North Carolina the other day. I don't know, 20 people, maybe. And Asheville, it's like, a very liberal area in Western North Carolina. And there's no crowd. And I saw another video of Warren. Elizabeth Warren is out, campaigning for Biden. And there were 8 people at her rally. So, I mean, forget what this means for the rest of the country. But I think for Arizona, if you consider it a toss-up state, for the two candidates, it could go either way, and it could. But if I have to make a prediction, and I feel like I have to, I've stuck my neck out so far. What's wrong with sticking it out a little bit further? I'd say Trump's going to carry Arizona as well. I mean, I don't see how he loses. I mean, they only have 100,000 voter edge over the Democrats, and you would think it would be, closer. But if you look at patterns in other states where Trump seems to be gaining support and the Democrats seem to be losing support, and you look at the enthusiasm gap, and again, Trump's been there 6 times and Pence a couple times himself. So they've got 6, 7, maybe more visits to Arizona. And Biden and Harris went twice together, and that's it. And at neither event do they seem to have had more than, they may not, I mean, I would say 100 people to be safe. It's conceivable they may not have had 24 people at each of the events. So maybe a total of between 30 and 50 people. Mike Pence can draw a bigger crowd than that one time. And this is collectively the two of them. And they don't even call them rallies. They just call them events. I think event should be a new word for holding a rally when no one's going to come. You call it an event. And, you have to wonder what's going on. So basically, Florida, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, I think they all go for Trump on November 3rd, which is not that far away. That's my prediction. I'll go with that. We'll see what happens. Like I said, what do I have to lose? It's not like I'm going to lose my business and maybe nobody's going to watch my videos. Nobody's watching them anyway. What the hell's the difference? So stick my neck out. On the other hand, what if I'm right? What if I've called all these states right? What if these trends I've talked about are all right? And all the pollsters, all the professional pollsters are wrong. Nate Silver's wrong. All these other people. What's that say about them? I mean, I'm not suggesting I should become, a national poll or predictor for elections or anything. But what's it say about them? I mean, they were so wrong 4 years ago. If they're wrong again 4 years later, I mean, why worry what they have to say? Oh, and I should add 2 more points. One about Nate Silver, and we need to keep this in mind. He wrote a piece back in August, and it was actually pretty good. He wasn't predicting things. He was looking at trends. And if you read that, and I posted it somewhere on Facebook, but things disappear on Facebook. He said, keep in mind, we got the Electoral College. And the Democrats run up big surpluses in places like California. I mean, they're going to win by hundreds of thousands of votes out there. And that distorts the polls, because when you poll nationally and you take a national sample, you can win in the poll. I mean, Hillary Clinton won. She beat Trump by 2% in 2016. She had more popular votes, as she never stops reminding us. And what Silver said was that Biden basically needs to win by probably 4%, between 3 and 4% to just have a 50-50 chance. If he really wants to win, he's got to do better than 4%, probably like 5 or 6 or maybe even 7%. So keep that in mind when you see polls, national polls that have Biden up by 3 or 4. If they're accurate, which they're probably not, they probably undercount Trump supporters. But even if they are accurate, at 3%, Trump's probably going to win. 4%, maybe it's 50-50. Unless Biden is leading in the polls by 5%, and the poll is actually accurate, it means Trump's going to win. So it doesn't matter if Biden is ahead in the polls. Hillary was ahead in the polls, and she did win in the popular vote by 2%, which was, I forget how many votes that turned out to be. And she lost big. I mean, Trump had a lot of electoral votes. So that's another thing to keep in mind when you hear the polls. If Biden's ahead by 1 or 2 or 3 points, what that pollster is telling you is Joe Biden is going to lose. If it's 4%, what he's telling you is, if the poll's accurate, which it probably isn't anyway, but even an accurate 4% poll means it's a toss-up. Unless you see Joe Biden ahead in the national polls by 5% or more, Donald Trump's probably going to be reelected president on November 3rd, 2020. So what do you think? Got an opinion on Arizona? Opinion on anything else I've said in some of these videos? Let me know in the comments. Love to see them. If you can, give the video a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification button so you know when I post new videos. There are more coming, and then I'm going to be away for a couple of days, so I probably won't post anything. Share the video with your friends. That really helps if you can. The other day, some of the videos were not shareable, and I know that's happening to other people on YouTube. I just watched one by Liberal Hive Mind, and he's sharing and stuff is down like 75%. So I'm getting hammered on Twitter. I'm losing followers. getting hammered on Facebook. Things are getting blocked. It's going on. But if you can, share the video with your friends, and stand strong, stand tall, and keep fighting.